next we're going to talk about alignment and spacing. So the alignment of the text is the way that it is lined up here on the page from left to right. So right now we're using something that is called left aligned. This is the most common alignment and also the easiest to read. What a left align does, you can see I have this nice straight line along the left side, and I have what's called a rag along the right. Okay, so these buttons right up here are my alignment. You can see if I get my tooltip, here's left aligned right there. Now, if I select this, let's just select all of it, I can come up here and I can say center aligned. Center aligned is going to have it nice and straight in the middle and then rags on the left and right. This is mainly going to be for titles or poetry. Right aligned, which is just the opposite of left aligned, nice straight line on the left, rag on the, or sorry, on the right, rag on the left. Or we have what's called justified. Justified adds in a little bit of space between the text so that you have a nice clean line on the left and on the right. Sometimes this can look really well. Sometimes it'll add in some big gaps or things like that in the text that you don't want there. So you got to be a little careful with justified. But that is my alignment. Next, let's talk about spacing. Now, oftentimes we need to type things that are double spaced, or if we want to add a little, like maybe 1.5 space, things like that. And what you don't want to do is press return twice after every line to get that spacing. That can cause major formatting issues. It's very, very easy to actually set the spacing. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these extra gaps that I've put here to get that spacing. And I'm going to go ahead and just select this all. And I'm going to click this button just to the right of the alignment buttons. It looks like 4 lines with an arrow going up and down on the left of it. And here are some of my preset spacing. So if I do 2.0, this is double spaced. Click on that, and now it's all double spaced and ready to go. Now, another sort of spacing that we do is spacing after each paragraph. Now, something that people do that is, again, a holdover from typewriters is to just hit return twice at the end of each paragraph so that you've got this extra spacing like that. That actually can cause formatting issues. The best way to add spacing after paragraphs is with the line spacing options. So I'm going to select all this. I'm going to come up and click on that same button that I clicked to get my line spacing, and I'm going to go to line spacing options. Now there's several things I have in here, and we're going to talk about some more in some later videos. But for now, I want to look at the one that says spacing. Now you can see here's my, again, double spacing, things like that. But what I'm looking at specifically is before and after. This is talking about adding a little bit of space before or after each of the paragraphs, or at least whatever I have selected, which in this case is everything. So I'm going to say I want to add in 12 points of space after each paragraph. And when I click OK, you'll see that it automatically puts in that extra space. But if I show my invisibles, you can see that there's only one return for each one. Well, except for down here where I've just trailed off. One return after each one, not 2 to get the extra space there. And the nice thing is as I'm typing, I can just press return again and start typing, and it's going to have that space there and all ready to go. Now, one question I get sometimes is, so what's the difference between, select that again, the space before and the space after? Well, when you're doing everything like this, there really isn't any difference. But if you're doing a specific paragraph or two, I'm going to go ahead and just select this one paragraph. And in this case, you can see that it's exactly what it sounds like. If I add spacing before the paragraph, then that's where the space will go, right up at the top of it. On the other hand, if I add space after the paragraph, then that's where the space will go. So that is the line spacing. The next thing I want to talk about is our spacing around the page in general, which is our margins. Margins is this padding that we get between the edge of the page and the edge of our text. So you can see on my outline of my page here, I've got this big fat white section to the left, to the right, to the top, and it would be to the bottom as well. So if I want to adjust that padding, for example, the default padding in Word 2011 for the Mac is 1.5 inches. And often for APA, well, for APA, not often, but for APA, we need to have a 1-inch margin. So quite often we'll need to change this. The way I change the margins is very easy. I can come over here to where it says Layout, and right here are my margins. So top, left, bottom, right. Right now they're set to 1.25 on the left and right, and 1 on the top and bottom. I can change these right here, or I can click this one that says Margins to the left, and I've got some presets. I can go to normal, and that'll do 1 inch all around. All ready for APA right there. Another way I can adjust the margins, if I don't want to go to the ribbon, I have these rulers, one at the top of the page and one at the left of the page. The blue portion of the ruler on the left and the right and on the top and the bottom are my margins. If I just double click within that blue, it pops up a little margins window, and I can adjust the margins right there. So that's adjusting the margins of my document. Another spacing thing that I can adjust are what are called indents. Indents is additional spacing to the left or to the right of your text in addition to the margin. So we've already got an inch here from the margin. Maybe I want to have a little bit more, and that would be an indent. Now, there's a couple of ways that I can adjust my indents, but first let's talk about the types of indents we'll be doing. There's a left indent, a right indent, or then there's also a first line indent or a hanging indent, okay? So let's talk about those. I'm going to select this paragraph of text in the middle, and I'm going to show you in a minute. We can use the ruler for this, but for simplicity, let's start off by using this menu. I'm going to go to line spacing and line spacing options. And right here it says indentation. So I've got left, right, and then under special I have first line and hanging, which we'll talk about in a minute. So I'm going to say I want this to have a 1/2 inch left indent. And when I select that, you'll see that now my text actually starts a 1/2 inch further to the left from the margin. Now if I undo that, again, go in here, we have a right indent. Let's say make that one 1 inch. And you'll see that now the right ends 1 inch from the margin. Now first line indent is very handy. I'm going to select all this, and I'm going to come and click on that drop down line spacing options, change this to first line, and I'm going to say I want a 1/2 inch indent on my first line, and you'll see it automatically indents the first line of each paragraph. So a lot of people do this by tapping tab. In reality, tab is actually there for lining up things like bullets and numbers, and the first line indent is the way you want to add that in. For one reason, it formats better. For another, it's automatic. So when I press return, I automatically have that first line indent. I don't have to hit tab at the beginning of every single paragraph. So that is a first line indent. The last one in here, and let's just select this paragraph for demonstration, is a hanging indent. A hanging indent is the opposite of a first line indent. It makes it so the first line is flush with the margin and the additional lines are indented a little bit. You actually will use this in reference pages quite often. So that's placing my indents with this menu. Again, I click line spacing options, and I can adjust them right here under indentation. Oftentimes that's the easiest way to do it. But another way you can do it is using the ruler. If you look over on the left margin of my ruler, I have this blue arrow pointing down and a blue arrow pointing up. And on the right margin, I have a blue arrow pointing up. The blue arrow pointing up on the right is my right indent. If I select this paragraph and drag that blue arrow to the left, you'll see that I am adjusting the right indent. Pull that back. The bottom arrow on the left is my left indent. So if I grab that bottom arrow and pull it, you'll see that I now have pulled the left indent. The top arrow is the first line indent. Pull that over and you see I've now added a first line indent. And if I wanted a hanging indent, I can either put my mouse right kind of in the middle and I'll get a little notification that says hanging indent, that tooltip, then I can pull it over. Sometimes it's hard to finesse that though, so sometimes it's easier just to pull over a left indent and then grab the first line and pull it back. The top one, put it back third. So Whichever way you want to control it, it's completely fine. Whatever makes you most comfortable. You can either be dragging those arrows up in the ruler, or you can come over and click on this option, line spacing options, and make your adjustments there to your indents.